Welcome back to Razmafzar TV. I'm really happy again to be back here with my colleague, with my friend, Bede from Australia. Hi, Bede. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good. Bede was telling me that he went out and he did archery and he practiced archery. Was it a good practice, Bede?
Yeah, it was. I've been alternating between different weight bows to build up my strength, and I must admit, it doesn't feel as bad as it used to. So either I'm getting stronger or the bows are getting weaker. I'm not sure, but it was very pleasant. The accuracy was a bit off. It's kind of so hot that sometimes the sweat's running into your eyes. So, but not that I'm a great archer at the best of days. I might know the technique and be able to kind of get my arms and hands to the right place, but that doesn't necessarily mean I always hit where I aim. Though maybe I do hit where I aim. It's just my mind wanders.
Yeah, great, great. Okay, Pete, today we are going to talk about Sasanian armor. Just for our viewers, we already wrote together and on Sasanian armor and published an academic article. I'm going to provide the link there. So if
Yeah.
viewers want to read it, they can go there and read that.
This is the
But
one we
today we
did
are going
with
to talk about
Saddlery.
Sasanian armor. We're not going to go into this academic talk and classification from the beginning. You can read the article. But we are going to have some pictures and we are going to talk about what do we see in these artifacts or stone reliefs. Is it okay, Beat?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, let me just go and share this with viewers. Okay, let me just go in the beginning of it. Just let me see. Okay, so it just jumped out. I'm sorry for this. Okay, let me just see. Okay, this is the first stone relief, as we can see it here. So, um, okay, we are not going to talk about weapons because we are going to have, if you wish, viewers wish, we can talk about them, the swords later. But we are going to talk about what they're wearing, specifically armor, helmet, or everything in that line. Okay, B, let's start with these two gentlemen on this stone relief.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at them. They appear to be wearing camis rather than a coat, and it appears to have a hem that's semicircular like that. Just means that it's cut up a bit at the sides, and long loose trousers and shoes rather than boots. Um, they're very muscular. They look like weightlifters.
Very strong guys, yes.
Yeah. This is and notice that they're standing like this, with their swords. I can't see. Can I? No, I can't. I was wondering whether I could enlarge it. I can't see any evidence of armor. What I can see is a dual supply worn with straps, which some ancient historians refer to as a sign of kingship. It's not part of the armor. It does look a little bit like the straps you sometimes see in things like the Bayeux tapestry, which
Yeah.
look as though they're meant to hold the armor at the chest, a chainmail. But this is documented in an Armenian source, contemporary Armenian source, as a particular named piece of jewelry that is an indication of a king. So it's a very high rank indication. So you wouldn't have everybody in the army wearing one of these. This is just the king, maybe sub kings, because he was the king of kings. There were actually other sub kings.
Yes.
The weird thing is the big ball on top of their heads, which the Greek called korimbus, I think, and it appears to be a bag that they gathered all their hair up into a big ball and they tied a bag on it and they wore their hat over it. It's just a peculiar thing. Didn't exist before the Sasanians, didn't exist after the Sasanians. It's just another thing to show off rank and importance.
Yeah.
like there's a in say an English or European crown, there's a velvet cap inside. That's the red bit you see between the gold and all that kind of thing.
Mhm.
This was just an indication of extreme rank, how important they are. But you see, they're almost standing at parade rest.
Yes.
They're in a very formal pose. Um,
And
right hand on top of the sword, and it's
I'm
very
just saying that because one of the fellow karateka asked me, "Oh, just excuse me, they are standing in heikodachi." No, 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 it's not heikodachi. It's fudodachi, guys. Okay, excuse me. I just wanted to mention that this is fudodachi. Look at the position of the feet. It's not heikodachi. Excuse me. I had to say it because many people come, oh, they're standing in heikodachi. No, no, it's just fudodachi. Sorry, just make an
no, that's
unrelated
okay.
comment. Okay, go ahead, please, Pete. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's another thing that's really obvious about this is the huge masses of hair.
Yeah.
Now, this is quite early, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And the in the earlier Parthian dynasty, big masses of hair on the sides of the head were part of the showing, noblemen and important people. And in Dara Europos, where they've got pictures of Persians of the Sasanian dynasty, they often have
Yes.
big hair.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a cultural thing.
Absolutely.
They're also wearing necklace, and each one is wearing a necklace.
Yeah. Oh,
But
they are.
to me, I'm not 100% sure because
Mhm.
it's a bit difficult to tell. Well, wait a minute. Um, they are wearing boots because if you look very closely towards the sides of their legs, you can
Here,
see the top of the boot coming up, and yeah, and it's probably a strap going up to their trousers underneath this because the boots are possibly soft leather.
I was just okay. I don't want to go into source, but I have to here. They are using scabbard slide system because
Yes.
Sasanian changed towards the end. They
Yeah,
then
towards the
Sasanian
end. This is
used the
this is the original
yeah.
style.
Yes, then they
And
started to use P-shaped double strap. But look at this. This
yeah.
is a scabbard slide, right? But look at this. What is this strap for? Is it a strap?
No, that's the top of the boots. I
Ah,
think
okay. I just wanted to make
I
it clear.
thought I thought it was the bottom of the shirt or the tunic, but I'm the way it comes up to a point either side is like you see it in steppe cultures too, where the boot has straps at the top that tie up onto the belt. And I've never noticed this before. You know how your mind can bring something as foregrounded or backgrounded,
Yeah,
like the
absolutely.
two bars thing. I
Yeah.
looked at and it foregrounded for me, and it looked like it was their shirt because
Mhm.
there are shirts showing with ends like that. I say shirt, tunic is probably a better word because it's probably thicker than a shirt.
Yeah.
But when I look at it again, it appears that it's actually their boots. And
Yeah.
there may even be some indication of straps above them. I don't know. It's hard. I bet if you were there, you could see it. But
Yeah.
photographs are good, but they're not as good as being there.
No, no. No,
But if that's
definitely.
the case, if they're wearing boots with straps, they also have ribbons tied around their ankles and that, which you see, particularly in the silver plates, is a
Yeah.
sign of status.
This one, you
Because
mean?
let me see.
This
No,
one?
no, right at their feet. You look how bulky they're at the arch of their foot down the bottom.
Oh, excuse me. This one.
Yeah, that's the ones I'm thinking of. The others, I would say, oh, it's very. Now that I've looked and seen the kind of boot things, now I'm really confused because clearly there's lots of dangling pieces of fabric and they're all rippled. Um, Possibly they were ironed into ripples like that, or maybe it's meant to be striped. It's very hard to say. They do like very light fabrics blowing in the breeze behind them when they're riding. Um, Again, only gods and kings could do this. It's
And look
interesting they're
at
wearing.
this. Look at
Yeah,
this.
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
Yeah. He
it
has it
could
as
be.
well. Hmm.
I wonder. I mean, see, again, if you were there, you could tell. It could be a cloak. or it could be two large pieces of fabric tied at the back.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be a
Uh,
clock as well. Yeah.
It's interesting that uh, around the groin level, you've got the same pattern. Is that a sash tied with flaps coming down?
This one,
Yeah, yeah. I,
he has it.
as I say, when you really look closely at these things, there's lots of detail. We have a king on my looking at this on my right with a crown, and
When I go
on
to Iran next time, you know that these things are huge, right? They're really huge.
yeah, yeah.
But I'm going to get a special camera and zoom on it so we can see clearly because I think a film will
So
do better justice.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the good thing about when we do these talks is sometimes you bring up stuff maybe taken from a different angle than I've seen in a book or something like that, and all of a sudden you see new things.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is my preliminary opinion. And if you go and take photographs, it might be something different. It might just look like what I think I can see there.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting.
Very beautiful art.
Yeah.
Beautiful art, really. Let us move on to the next, please.
Yeah.
Oh, this one. I love this one. Unfortunately, this is the later picture, so the environment has taken its toll on it, right? But I remember when you look at Gershman book and pictures, earlier pictures, you could clearly see the mail armor, right?
Oh
That
yeah, yeah.
is,
I've got his book, and it's very clear. You can I think you can even see the rivets.
yes. But now,
It's
unfortunately, look at this damage what the environment has done to it, right?
yeah. It
Yeah,
was fairly deeply buried for
yeah,
about 1,000 years. So,
yes,
but it's interesting. You can see the horse is wearing two big tassels hanging off its crupper. The one against the wall is clear. The one on the outside towards us is broken off. Um,
yeah.
but I remember again from Gershman, because Gershman was very clear. Um, he's got a male shirt that's going a little past halfway down his thighs,
Here
and
you
his
see it's
clothes underneath,
broken, isn't it? This part.
yeah, bits have broken off. I mean, though you can still see decoration on the shield and that, so it's not completely gone. But here we have a man who's wearing a male shirt. See, the problem is his arm is gone too, so we don't know
Yeah,
how long the sleeve was.
nice
Um,
arm is gone.
it may have been to there, or it may have been to here, or it may have been all the way to the wrist, which is not impossible because they knew how to make mail.
Yeah,
It's interesting, as we discussed in the article, that the horse's armor is lamellar
yeah,
of a
yeah,
particular type
yeah. Lamellar armor. Yeah.
with tassels to make it look pretty. But um, the thing about that is that it's lamellar that's very common from Byzantium, but not common in the East. So the question is, and I think we asked in the article, did this originate in Sasanian Iran, and then was it adopted by the Byzantines? Because it's in Bulgaria. They've dug them up in Bulgaria. They've dug them up, I think, in Spain, Cartagena.
Yeah.
And of course, the famous case are the Visby armors, where the armors made of that type of scale were reused. But in the East, you never see this scale pattern. And my guess is that because also in near Shiraz, there was an excavation, and they found a whole chunk of this lamellar armor where they had, I think it was 14 iron scales, one brass scale, 14 iron scales, one brass scale. It was alternated the metals were changed. Exactly the whole pattern, the lacing pattern of this. And it's a very suitable type of scale for making horse armor because it's flexible, like it moves,
Yeah,
but it doesn't collapse very much. And
it's true.
it would stay down. See that? The armor goes down below the horse's knees. I say knees, it's not rooted the horse's knees, but
Yeah.
so it's actually
Is
quite
it
low.
like broken off or is it two
Yeah,
layers broken off?
yeah. It's I again. I think you're right. Atmospheric conditions and that moisture in the air, it's getting into the rock. The rock is expanding a little bit, then it dries out and it contracts again, and bits are falling off. Conserving something like this is really quite difficult because it's so big.
It's really huge.
I mean, we look at it because we have no scale and we think, oh, this is like a life-size statue. It's not a life-size statue.
No, it's
It's
huge.
much bigger.
It's really huge. If you
I mean,
stand here, you're like here, right?
yeah, Egyptian pharaohs would have been quite happy with one of these because
Yes, exactly.
it's impressive. And I
Yeah,
remember seeing photographs with people there and
yeah,
going, oh, goodness, how big that thing is.
yeah. They're
And to
really
think it's
huge.
got all that detail carved into it.
Yeah,
What what is interesting about the armor is, so the man's armor is flexible mail. The horse's armor is a semi-flexible lamellar. The man is carrying a shield, which I would say was in the 40 centimeter to 45 centimeter size.
yeah.
It's quite big. It doesn't look big, but if you take into account it's covering him from just above the pommel of his saddle all the way up to above his chin. So it has to be at least that big. It's really well detailed, so it was considered an important
It's
thing.
like look at this speed. It's
Yeah,
like a sun rays, right?
yeah, that's it. It's got quite a intricate pattern on it,
Yeah.
which is a perfect kind of design to go with a round shield. I mean, they lend themselves to this. You might also notice behind him is the flowing ribbons and pieces of
Yeah.
cloth and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff on his helmet, on his back.
The helmet is fascinating. I love it. Let's see if it has a face mask, right?
I think I've looked at it fairly closely, and it looks to me, the Grendel style. Is it Grendel? Pre-Viking helmets from about the same date as this in Scandinavia have like a
But that's what I meant. Exactly. For the
and then
eyes.
the tail goes all the way around,
Exactly.
and this this is it's a good way of, I mean, just having a nasal like they did later isn't as effective as this is, because it holds the male away from the face. Almost certainly the male around his neck and that would have been padded, because
Absolutely.
mail by itself is not going to stop a mace or something whacking him in the throat, but padding can
Absolutely.
absorb a lot of it. But he has to, because his face is covered by the mail, in the
Yes.
front, it has to be, you can't have too much padding because you won't be able to breathe. I mean, people wore great helms in Europe, which completely covered the head and only had little holes drilled in them. But I think this would have possibly had a bare patch with no padding around the face under the mail. So the mail went all the way down and it looked the same all the way around. But I think down here, there would have been padding, maybe 4 layers of linen or something like that. There has to be some kind of lining, because you don't want riveted mail scratching your face.
No. Exactly. Beautiful, isn't it? It's really
A
fascinating.
wonderful piece. It really is.
Let's go to these guys.
Okay.
Okay. I really, really love his coat. Look at this.
Oh yeah.
What do
And
we see?
well, this is interesting because, well, you can see he's wearing that dual strap arrangement on his chest. That his, as his arms going over there, you can see it underneath, and
Yeah.
he's
Let me just
got.
show it for viewers. Oh
Mhm.
God. Do you see this flash here?
Yeah,
This one.
that's it. Yeah,
Exactly.
and it's probably meant to be set with pearls because he's the king of kings.
Yeah.
The sword is sword slide again. You notice
Mhm.
now. I don't know. Just looking at this in Europe, swords of this nature were often with a sword slide like that. were often slung from a double belt.
Yeah.
So that there's a belt around the waist that stops it sliding up and down, and another belt that comes from behind and goes through the slide. And you basically got to undo both belts to take the sword off.
Yeah.
But in the sword slide seems to have developed in East Asia first, in China,
Yeah.
and there's indications that they used one long belt that went around the person twice.
Yeah.
And that never died out, because I've seen a Turkish sword with that type of belt made in the late 1600s. So that's not an unusual thing. The advantage of that, it's one strap, you take it off. And when you wear it, the sword hangs to its level, and the waist part tightens to stop it moving around, so you can set your sword to sit exactly where you want it. You notice in the silver plates, the sword is always sitting back a bit, so you reach back, or you whatever. It's out of the way of the archer. Now, the thing about his coat, it's not clear if it has an opening.
Yeah.
It may again be a tunic just covered in jewels and embroideries and whatever. The person on his
You know what it
left.
reminds me of? It reminds me somehow of that. What's the name of it? I always forget these Indian names of this Rajput armor, where they
Oh,
have
coat
this.
of 1,000 nails type armor.
Yes, yes, that's it. That's it. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's the point. Looking at it, without going into it too deeply, it looks a bit like brigandine.
Yeah.
But the decorative things are too big, and it looks like a tunic, which in brigandine would be very difficult to put on, because all the plates on the inside would stop it from coming down. Brigandine makes great coats or great side opening things. The other thing that makes me think it may not be a coat, because the Sasanian coats tended to open on the left side down there, the later
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah.
But if you look closely at the person on his left, it
On
looks
his
like
left. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
it looks like they've got a coat on over their shoulders. But if you look really closely, I think it's a cloak. It's a single piece of fabric, and it's also covered in. It's got pearls down the sides of the the borders of the garment. So I'm wondering if how old is this one? The crown is obviously identifiable, so we know who it is.
I think it was identified. I just didn't want to go into the king's names in
Oh
this.
yeah, yeah. No, fair enough, because that will slow us down.
Yes.
But yeah, I think from the sword and the and other things, I would think this might be like 4th or 5th century, maybe
Yeah.
something like that.
I mean, it's
If you
not
look,
late. It's not late Sasanian. That's clear.
yeah,
Right.
middle.
Yeah. I would say
Yeah,
so.
we've got a lady on the. I assume that's meant to be Anahita on
Mm.
the on his right, pouring
Mhm.
water on the ground as an offering. It could
That's
be,
right. This one.
wine.
Let me just show our viewers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The thing I like about Persian art in general, going even all the way back to the Achaemenids,
Yeah.
is this detail of everyday objects.
Yes.
They often you could you see the object in a carving, and they've dug one up and it's exactly the same. Not
Yeah.
exactly, but so close that you
Pete,
know
look
that
here. What is this?
it
This.
appears to me that you know how they often have those two long trailing scarves, or the end of one long scarf. I
Yeah.
think that's them turned up because the wind is blowing up, and I think that's what it is. Is he being handed that object in the person on his left hand? Which way is it going? Is it going from the king to the man, or from the man to the king?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody's got a very learned paper on it. But again, you see that ribbon pattern
Yeah.
on the lady is holding a diadem, like
Yeah.
a ring crown, and it's
Yeah.
got that long ribbon on it.
Yeah.
This must have a lot of significance. I'm just
Here
not.
as well. Look.
Yeah. See, when I think back on it, there's a famous um, wall painting from Dura Europos, I think it's Dura Europos, of three men in Persian costume. And it's called the Three Wise Men. Whether or not it was that, I don't know. I think it was from a Christian church. And they are clearly wearing quite elaborately patterned clothes, and they have cloaks like that. And they have little hats. But so to me, it looks very much like this is really rich clothing. And it's interesting that it comes below the knees on the men, whereas often it's above the knees if you see it in the silver plates and things like that. So this is a formal occasion. Obviously, it's a formal occasion. If possibly the two people on the outside, we're guessing that the woman is Anahita, possibly the man is Ormuzd. And maybe what they're doing is crowning the king. Or offering, I mean, we could do a whole Tolkien thing and say offering him the rings of power, but they're really crowns of some sort. The Sasanians had a aside from a fairly strong desire to represent historical things like the battle scenes or the hunting scenes, they also like these formal things which have a lot of symbolic meaning in them.
Yes, absolutely.
They do know how to articulate their stone carvings to give a strong three-dimensional feeling. It's just like, unlike the classical Greeks and later Greeks and Romans, Hellenistic things, they're not interested in naked people. So you don't have, they do have silver wear and that with people with very little clothing on, usually women, or Hercules, because they liked Hercules. But in general speaking, you don't get these heroic semi-nude male figures, which is a common thing in Roman and Greek art, because they were into that kind of thing. But the detailed patterning on the cloth, on the sword scabbards, everything is so clear and detailed.
We go to the next one. Have you seen this before?
I think I have. Isn't this from somewhere? Is this outside the normal area for these?
No. I mean, all of them are located in Iran, right?
But, right. I thought, because they found something similar to this in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
The empire extended into Afghanistan at various times. But again, this time I think you can see the sword is more clearly defined. You can see the crossguard, which is classic for early and middle Sasanian period.
Look at the legs, Pete. Look at the legs.
Is he meant to be sitting?
Yes.
Yeah. And notice, I think that little trapezoid thing with the lines across it, covering his groin, is the sash tied up.
Yeah.
He's got elaborate necklaces.
Yeah.
I would say. Yeah, that's what that looks like. He's got the big hair. Possibly he was wearing a crown and it's broken now. What's he holding in his right hand? So he's got his left.
It is a spear.
Yeah. He's got quite a serene, even though the face is eroded, it's quite serene.
It is.
And he's got a square cut beard, which isn't that common. But yeah, he's kind of, looking out into the universe or whatever. But again, see, this is fairly detailed showing of what people were wearing. I mean, obviously what kings were wearing or high nobles. which kind of adds to the when you see something like the Khusrau statue of the man on horseback with all that armor detail, it makes you think that they were pretty careful about showing things as they saw them.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's not trying to be realistic or anything, but the people that, like the king, when he paid for a big sculpture like this to be done,
Yeah.
wanted to see his armor in the sculpture.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few I think Sasanian era wall paintings survived in various places,
Yeah.
and they're intensely focused like that. I mean, in the West, they often talk about Sasanian textiles, which have figures of warriors and horse archers. And there's a particular textile from Egypt that they
Yes.
think was made during the Sasanian occupation when Khosrau generals conquered Egypt.
Yeah.
And there's, that's really the poor cousin of what the painting must have been like.
Mhm.
And I assume, like Greek and Roman statues, these were painted originally
Yeah.
because that was just what people did. So what we're looking at is really the skeleton of a painting in 3D, or as much
Yeah.
3D as you can get.
Yeah.
Again, the other thing is the strength that they're
Mhm.
trying to project.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The king is, again, muscular. They like big shoulders.
Yeah.
Actually, at archery practice today, one of the people I shoot with said since he's taken up archery, he's gone up 3 shirt sizes because the exercise builds the shoulders up. But that wasn't all they were doing. They were obviously doing similar things to what is done in the Zerkhani today with
Yeah.
the clubs and all that kind of stuff, because that was how they trained. That was their idea.
Yes.
And I mean, the Greeks and Romans had similar kinds of things, they had gymnasia and all this kind of stuff. People in the past, if they had the money and the time, did like to keep fit,
Yes. That's
just
true.
like us, except without earbuds and music.
This is from the Stone Museum in Kermanshah, Iran.
This is a very interesting sculpture.
Yeah, extremely. Now, look at the helmet, guys.
Yeah. This
Look
this
at.
is
Hmm?
this
Good?
is this is proper mail being shown in detail.
Yeah.
When we looked at this, you can see he's got his mail shirt. He's got mail on his helmet, right? An
Mhm.
Aventail.
Yeah.
But he's wearing
Yes.
a mail shirt because you can see the mail around his waist. It's important not to get too carried away by those little flowers and loops down there. That's part of the column design, I think.
Yeah.
Or part of the fact that they're trying to make a little cameo of him. Bear in mind, this is a top of a column, which would have been, you know, 20 meters up in the air. But it's very detailed because, that's what they like. The disc behind his head is to show his
Mm.
Hvane, is it? The far?
Yeah.
The
Far
Yeah.
Izadi. Yes.
Yeah. But there's lots of interesting things in this sculpture. If you look at just above his elbows, under his little cloak he's wearing, they look a lot like Greek or Roman perigee, the straps of leather alternating. They may be splint armor. They
Yeah.
may be strips of metal that are laced together
I
to
think
form
so.
an.
Yeah.
The problem is it's a bit difficult to tell. He's got, I think it's just the sleeves of his clothes rather than a patterned Bazarban type armor on his arms. We do know that the
Look at this.
Bazarban,
Look at here, Beat. Look. Look.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think that's the fabric of his clothing. Whereas above where his cloak is clasped there, because the necklace has a pendant And what he's doing with his fingers is kind of showing you the pendant.
Yes, he's.
Uh,
You know,
I mean,
let's
got a
say,
ring.
let's say it's splint armor, right? And let's say the shape is like Bazuban. This would also make complete sense, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, it could well be. And this is one of the problems. We have no in the Ardashir Shapur fighting the Parthians. They have strip armor all
Yeah,
the
they
way up
do.
their sleeves, and then
They
they
do.
have a mail shirt over it, and the same
Which
on their.
goes, excuse me, which goes in line with why he's wearing the heavy helmet. And then
Yeah,
this, you see, this goes all in line.
yeah, and this is the problem, that when you've got something like this, where you know where it came from, you know what it's trying to show you, but you've got things that could be one thing or another thing.
Look at this
And
speed. These are again mail armor. You see?
yeah, it's beautifully detailed. And I remember when we were writing the article,
Yeah.
because we were looking at little pictures of parts of this, it was very easy to get distracted by things that weren't actually part of him. I mean, the helmet is a classic in the sense it's a strip helmet, strips of metal formed into a helmet.
The Spangenhelm, right?
Yeah, well, Spangen helmet I think is a good term for them, because they the Spangen the strips, whether there's 8 in the classic like Germanic tribe Spangenhelm, or there's 12 or 13 or whatever, 12, well, 12 or 16. Um, it's a practical way of making a strong helmet,
Yeah.
which is easy to repair, because if a part it doesn't matter whether it's riveted or laced together. It's easy to repair if a part gets damaged.
Yes.
Um, the They're quicker to make, because you only have to make strips of metal and then cut the parts out and punch a few holes and put them together, rather than when you hammer a helmet out of a single piece of metal, you've got to hammer it a bit, then heat it up and anneal it to soften it, and then hammer it a bit, then heat it up and anneal. It's a really long process, and it's a very highly skilled process. I'm not saying that they didn't make helmets that way too, but this is quite an attractive thing. You notice the aventail's attached. It comes up here. It's not under his chin. It comes up to his jaw, which says we're trying to show you this is real fighting equipment, not just trying to be pretty.
Yeah.
Um, the fact that the male collar, he's wearing a some kind of necklace over it, which is you can see around here, and then you've got the pendant hanging down. When I originally saw this, I thought the pendant was a clasp and he was wearing a cloak clasp by the. But the more I looked at it, the more it was clear that the pendant is attached to this rather massive necklace he's wearing.
Yeah.
We had a very close look at what was between the top of the cloak that was um, over his shoulders and the bottom of the neck guard, and it looked like some kind of lames of armor or a breastplate made from pieces hammered together. It's really interesting. At the time, it occurred to me that maybe that part of the armor, which doesn't extend, see, because this is foreshortening, you're looking up like that, it might be that his body is meant to be longer when you're looking up at the column, and that the the mail at the bottom is actually the skirt of the armor. See, I mean, it looks from here down, but it could be actually from the waist down, because it's foreshortened because you're looking up at it. In that case, he may have a breastplate on that
Yeah.
comes down to his weight, and he's wearing a mail shirt under it.
Yeah.
And then you start to think, well, are these things on his arm? Is this meant to be like a Hellenistic breastplate or a late antique breastplate, showing him to be related to the heroes of the past? Or are we looking at a real piece of armor that has using the structure and that's necessary to make it, they've added features to give it that look, so that the strips look a bit like derogates, but they're not. Or are they just a conventional thing for doing it warrior? There's some famous pictures of well, not pictures, sorry, not sculptures, metalwork, gold figures from Central Asia, Bactria or further northeast, showing people in classical armor.
Yeah,
And they were gods, and they wore that armor because they were gods, not because that was the armor that people were wearing around about the place at the time. And this happens particularly in Western art because of the strong influence of classical things. And it may be the diadem, the disc with the ribbons on it, representing kingship, I would imagine. Maybe there's some connection between all these things. If that pendant, if there are straps underneath it going around his chest, then we're looking at a king here.
Yeah.
Or a high-ranking prince.
Yeah.
I see. I kind of like your idea that he might be wearing basabands and a splintered or lamellar.
I think so. They really look like bazuband. Look, and
yeah, they have that look.
And
but
he seems to go in line, a heavily armored guy, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's what he's meant to be. It's and in later times there was a tendency of wearing fine mail underneath and big ring mail on top.
Yeah.
The fine mail's to stop the stabs and the arrows, and the big ring mail is to absorb the blows of swords and things like that.
Yeah.
There's a name for it in Russian, I can't remember now. But quite a few of them survived from the 16th, 17th centuries in Russia and Ukraine and places like that.
Okay, this one as well. This one sits outside in the museum.
Yeah, that's again, you see that pendant on his chest. He seems to be wearing a helmet too. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And look at this, Bede. You see this? It looks like I don't know, like roundish, like scales. Do you see that?
I think we're looking at sets of three discs.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there are three. Yes, I agree. There are three.
That could represent either rivets, and this really is some kind of fabric mounted internal plate type armor, or they have a symbolic meaning because they were still used in the Ottoman Empire on fabric. 3 balls that they were called the fingerprints of Timur, because they were supposed to represent the blood-soaked fingertips that Timur put on something. And they also sometimes had like little wavy lines under them, which were tiger stripes or something like that. This could be the origin of them. That might be a very old thing that has no other documentation except for this. The fact that they're separated from each other suggests they're either representing something. I think Chintamali in Turkish, I think it is. They're either representing something like that, or we're looking at it some kind of brigandine.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Very hard to tell.
Very detailed. Extremely.
Beautiful. Yeah. Oh, this is the whole thing. I mean, again, we've got he's got his hand here. He's not resting it on a sword like the other earlier figures.
No, he's
not. And he's holding a diadem up in his hand, like he's
It's beautiful.
Saying, "Oh, God's just given me this. I am now the ruler." It's so hard to say. He's wearing a belt rather than a sash too.
Yeah, and look, Bede, look at this pattern. Look, do you see the follow?
I can't. Your face is in the way. The way the screen is layered.
Can you see the flash on the screen here?
No, I can. where our images are on this screen
Ah,
covers that side of him.
ah. And now?
No, it's still the same. I
Same.
can't see anything to the my right of I can see his shoulder, and then
Okay.
you're there, and that cuts it off. What's
Okay.
interesting to me is it appears there are lines like that, like his cloak is tied together and it's wrinkled.
Yeah.
And then there are below his elbow, you can also see the fabric, all
Yes.
because they love this fabric blowing in the wind.
Let me see if I can make it. Can you see it now?
No, nothing's moved. It's exactly the same.
Exactly. Ah, that's terrible. Okay.
Yeah. If there was a setting to put our faces on the opposite side of the screen, I'd be able to see it perfectly.
If you go to the setting, this is what you see of us. There is
Mm.
something on the left you can click on.
Oh, it says show grid video. What's the next one? Oh, that's the one we've got at the moment is the 2 bars. Let me see what happens when I press this. I hope it does. Oh, it made you bigger. Oh, I moved you. I've moved you. And now I can see the other side. So there's a big disc floating with a kind of stylized flower on it. He's
Yeah.
got the long ribbons coming from his helmet or
Yeah.
his iPad helmet.
And now,
And
can you
then we
see the
have other
flash?
ribbons.
Look at this. The same
Yeah,
pattern. Do you remember?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I wonder if is it striped fabric or is it meant to be the crinkles, like when you. It's
Interesting.
really interesting. It's
Really.
obviously meaningful to the people.
Yeah. Let me
Um.
move to the next.
Okay.
And okay, we get closer. You see that? Look at here, right? And now let's get closer. Beat, look now.
Yeah.
And you see
Definitely.
this pattern is everywhere. Look,
Yeah.
everywhere.
I'm starting to think that is definitely a fabric pattern rather than an armor pattern, because notice it's a little random. It's not in rows. If it was brigandine, those would be in rows
Mm,
because there would be rows of plates underneath the thing. So I think that is meant to be a fabric pattern.
mm.
Um, and they seem to be 3 dots.
Yeah.
There might be something else there, because you've got to remember that not only would you have a background pattern on the fabric, you might have extra things embroidered or woven in. Because this was a thing in Iran, things which would be embroidered in other places often were woven into the fabric because their textile industry was fairly advanced.
Yes. So this was this one. Look at this guy. Look, Deed. Again, do you see? This is a
Oh, yeah.
disc.
And
Then like
he's
a
holding his sword. Can you see the sword in his hand?
yeah, exactly.
And again, we have the ribbons, and I think he's wearing that jewel on his chest, but he's also wearing a necklace that's got a pendant. I mean, when you're the king, you can do that. And do you notice? Of course you do. He has discs with little tassels
Yeah,
attached to his coat.
this one.
And
Let me just show it. This one.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Now that's really interesting, because remember the tassels on the lamella. Having tassels on armor was quite common.
yes, I think it's an armor. Look here, please look.
Yeah, it really does look a bit like it. Whether that is like the outside and in the inside there's a bigger plate, which
Yeah.
could be. Is
Yeah.
that Khusrau? Because his facial features look a bit like him.
Yes, I don't know.
He's got that Henry VIII shaped face.
Look
But
at
this is
this. Look at I really think it's an armor. You see that? Look, please.
I
Look.
I think it could well be.
Oh,
Whatever it was, think of how spectacular it would be when you're walking around wearing that with all these little tassels and flat. I'm assuming the discs are metal and they'd be really shiny.
yeah.
I mean, this would be
And
very
look,
spectacular.
his his crown is at the same time looks to be a helmet. Do you see that? Like a crown
I
helmet.
it's odd in some ways because normally the crenellations of the crowns on normal crowns are quite big. These are
Exactly.
small now. And then there's a dome, and then
Yes.
there's a disc representing the corimbus. Instead of a ball, it looks like a flat disc. And there's two wings coming out of the crown, which is probably diagnostic for him to say this. The kind of identifying of Sasanian kings based on their crowns is a unique thing of Sasanian Persia, because we have the coins which have the king wearing his
I think
crown
our
and his
colleague Dr.
name.
Akbarzadeh is an expert in that field,
Yeah,
recognizing them by these features. Yes.
it's not as easy as some people make out, because sometimes they wore a different crown at a different period of their
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And I mean, we go along and say, "Oh, this is such and such," but you really do need experts who've been studying it for quite a long.
Beautiful, isn't it? This one.
It's lovely. Oh, this makes me think, when you show things that are, well, in Japanese armor, there's a type of hexagonal plate that's sewn into fabric, and there's right in the middle that it has four little holes, and those four holes are where the plate is firmly attached. So it's sewn around the edges, so you get a hexagonal pattern, and then in the center of each hexagon is two little crossed straps. It's possible that what they're representing here, the discs with the tassels, are the superficial part of the armor, the part you can see on the outside. In the Middle East, wearing things that cover your armor, having things like kazagan, where the armor is concealed inside the fabric, this is
That's
quite
correct.
normal.
Normal.
And
Yes.
even going back to the Achaemenids, in the Battle of Plataea, the Greeks were busily trying to murder Mesistus, and only after his clothes ripped did they realize he had this gold scale armor on underneath, and that's why
Yes.
they were stabbing him and nothing was happening. So they stabbed him in the face. Of course, they were nice people. But well, this was the thing. The armor wasn't always. I mean, the clothing could be very showy, and I think this is a very showy way of showing off you've got an armored coat on.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, that's not one I'd seen before, and that's really impressive.
Look at this one. Again, you see the pattern? Please take a look at this.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard to say whether sometimes the pattern is armor and other times it's just very rich fabric. Remember when Husrev Hafiz is hunting on the boat and he's shooting, he's got a coat on with senmurv. All kinds of things have been carved in to show the fabric. And of course, because he's hunting, he's not wearing armor. And
Yeah.
he's got one of those belts with the little dangly straps on them and everything. And when you see this is I think he's just wearing a crown in this one. This,
You
to
know,
me,
Mhm.
it doesn't look quite so martial, but he could be holding a sword, in which case maybe it is. This massive amount of jewelry that the kings wore. I mean, the only comparable thing nowadays would have been the Maharajas in British India,
Yeah.
where, as one of the ways to show their status was having, necklaces with 9 rows of diamonds or something on them, something that no normal person could ever afford or even imagine.
You brought a very good point of saying when they are hunting, they are not wearing an armor, which is completely true. But it just I just like came across my mind that yeah, that's right. Until an Asian lion is sitting on your chest, throw you down, and you wish you had an armor, right?
I have a feeling, and I may be wrong, that if a lion slapped you with its claws and you were wearing armor, it would just break your bones. Now there are in Usama ibn Munkid's memoirs, he has several descriptions of people fighting lions and things going wrong.
Yeah.
And in one case, the lion was trying to maul his leg, and he had so many layers of clothing on his legs. So he had trousers, over trousers, boots that pulled all the way up and tied to his belt, all this kind of stuff, that the lion was happily tearing away, and they thought this guy's leg's going to be torn off. And when they drove the lion off, he got up. He was bruised, but the layers and layers of fabric prevented the lion getting its claws into him. I think that the Sasanians would have been followers of this idea of multiple layers of clothing, because it's the most practical way of changing your insulation levels. The other thing that always strikes me, if you see the kings hunting, which is you do on the silver plates mostly, I mean, they're either having a party and drinking and feasting and watching dancing girls, or they're out hunting lions or mouflon or wild boars or whatever. Then they seem to be wearing just shirt, baggy trousers, jewelry, because he's the king. And they have their sword with them, but it's mainly the bow and arrow that's the main thing in hunting. Though there are ones with spears, and ones where I think they may be javelins rather than normal spears, shorter throwing weapons, which is a long tradition in Iran.
Yes.
But that, again, really beautiful stuff.
Okay, this is, but when you compare to Iran Kermanshah Museum, which are kept inside, of course, this stone museum, and when you come and look at those which are still in the exposed to the natural environment, then you start. At least I was just thinking maybe these guys were used to be very detailed as well, but now we just see them like this, right?
I agree totally. I think that these were originally highly decorated.
Yeah.
The horse in the middle there,
is
you can actually see the type of saddle it's wearing, even though it's very eroded. And we were discussing a while ago about how I think these saddles look very much like modern gaucho saddles in South America, without the stirrups, because this type of saddle didn't have stirrups. And it makes me wonder, because the reconstruction of Roman saddles that was done by Connolly built a tree into it, a wooden tree to take the horns, because it's quite clear in Sasanian carvings that the saddles had horns to go over your thighs, so you didn't go headfirst over the horses. Because if you haven't got stirrups, you've got to have something to keep you there if you're doing quick maneuvers on your horse, which I think they did. And I think the difference with the Sasanian ones is, and I'm not 100% sure of this, because there is a silver horse that has 4 knobs on his saddle and some chains, which suggests that they could strap themselves onto the saddle.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Looking at when people are wearing clothes that cover the cantle of the saddle, it seems to be smooth. So maybe it's a smooth curve at the back and 2 kind of overlapping things at the front, like an Australian stock saddle or something like that. But it's very, very interesting how detailed these are. And
look at this.
Remember when we were talking about Persian miniatures? Look how full of character the horses are.
Yes.
They're real participants in this.
Yes, Persian art kept lots of it over centuries. Its elements, of course.
They love horses. I think they loved animals in general.
Yes,
because everything, the deer, rabbits, everything in a painting will be very carefully detailed. See, what's interesting about this is the king and the god, I think this is Ahura Mazda and one of the Shahs, are very large. And the horses are small by comparison. But you look at the build of the horses and they're really quite massive. And I don't think the horses were really big. I think in a way this is, I don't think people's feet were just that far above the ground when they were riding horses. I mean, the feet have broken off here, so it's a bit hard to say. But my feeling is that the horses may have been, we measure in hands, so 14 hands to, I think a hand is that, I'm not sure. It's 4 inches in the old imperial measurements, or 10 centimeters. So 14 hands at the at the withers, which is that part of the horse's, the base of the horse's neck. 14 to maybe 15 hands, which isn't a big horse nowadays. But I think back then it was quite a big horse. And if they're really strong and muscular like this, then you don't need a giant horse if it's strong enough to carry a full-grown man wearing armor and all that kind of stuff. The bigger the horse, the more it eats, basically. So, but they do this is and the way they're holding the reins and everything, it's all for fighting. See how the horse's head is right down like that? They've probably got, there's a type of bit that's been dug up in Fars province from this period, from the Sasanian period,
Yeah.
which is very much related to the kind of Hellenistic curb bit.
Yeah.
And it causes the horse to arch its neck and put its head down. And they do that to make it be able to turn fast and things like that. And also, you know, to make sure the horse did what they wanted it to do. But you look how comfortable they're sitting on those horses.
Yeah.
And you can see the little tabs coming out from the saddle over their thighs too.
The next one is eroded. As you can see, the sword is shown very well. But
that is a beautiful depiction of the sword. And if somebody had that sword in the Middle Ages in Europe, nobody would have noticed. It's so advanced in its design. The sword guard looks like it's a sword guard, as opposed to the guards on, say, Viking swords, which were to stop your hands moving up and down. They often, Roman swords like gladiuses, the whole guard is a piece of wood. It's not meant to stop you, somebody else's sword blade coming down. It's meant to give you a good grip on the sword, because your shield was doing all that hard work. These swords are, bear in mind, that belt, not the belt that's going to the sword, but the belt that's going around his waist, would be at navel height, because that's where people wore belts. I mean, you know, before hipsters. So the sword is above navel height when he's standing up. So
I always wonder why this part has been eroded, but the rest are kept intact.
I will remember, this is probably layers of rock, strata, and this is a different type of rock. I mean, it's a different material. You look, it's full of hollows. That's a kind of thing I see on sandstone around here. We see it down by the beach. There's a lot of rocks that look like that. But you may have a harder rock above it and a harder rock below it, because even the colors are different.
Yeah.
A geologist could tell you exactly what that was and why it's eroding like that. It's a very fine portrait of his face as well.
Look at this. Okay, now the whole thing in the middle is gone. Look.
Yeah.
This guy is here, right? Look. The whole thing in the middle is gone.
That's like that, yeah.
Really strange. Maybe
just that strata of rock wasn't very hard, because look at how finely detailed.
Really, yeah.
Thing is, and the lower parts of the earth. Yeah, I would say that whole layer of rock is just crumbled. Yeah, because
because there was a person who was telling me that's part smugglers stole, and I just said, if the smugglers stole that part, why did they do that? They could have done, you know, a complete.
Yeah, why not the heads? That's the part that's going to be worth money.
This doesn't make sense at all, right?
No.
Does it? It doesn't, Bede.
Not at all.
Not at all. What kind of argument is that?
But then, you know, people are trying to find a reason why things are done the way they're done.
Yeah, I mean, I just told our colleague, why should they come and steal this part? I mean, it's protected site anyhow, but let's say in the past, and not just go vertical. You know, get the complete person instead of going that way. It doesn't. I mean, I'm sorry.
I have a feeling it's a soft strata in the rock rather than, and it may, when they carved it the first time, it may have looked all the same. It might have been all the same color. Everything looked good, and this has been there for how long? Maybe 1,500 years.
Yeah.
Out in the weather.
Yeah.
It's so hard to say how these things happen. I mean, this is high up on a cliff. It's not like there was sand covering it up to one height and then it got
Yeah.
what it's not that. It has to be. It looks smoothly curved, that gap along there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it's the rock. But I'm not a geologist, I don't know. It's really interesting though when you see how detailed everything is carved.
Yeah.
Look at the horse's tail, it's all plaited and
Yeah, that's right. Look.
yeah. We make sure our horses look good.
Yeah.
You see, there's another horse that's
What's
kind
the
of
name
like,
of that animal which has the same? I forgot the name. Amadiri or something like that, right? They have such a tail. Anyhow,
like
look
the
at
lip
this.
and things like that. They do that with.
Yeah. Look at this one. Oh, they're all
Oh,
strong guys. Look at them.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very nice.
there's a standard parade rest type thing with your swords here. And look how big the swords are.
Yeah, really big.
Because they're resting on, well, they're almost resting on the ground. There's maybe this much gap between the ground and the sword so the shape doesn't get damaged. So
Yeah,
the
look at
belt is,
this guy. Look at this one. This one shows it clearly. Look, please.
yeah, yeah. So you can see the shaping of the scabbard, the design of the scabbard. And the next guy, see, they're not all at the same. See, some people are taller than other people, which is more likely to be to do with rank than it is to do with in reality, because we're
But
not
look at
trying.
this. They don't follow the same. Like this guy is tall. Okay, let's forget this guy. This guy is taller, the tallest among these three. Then this guy
Yeah,
is shorter, but this guy is even shorter. No, he's a bit taller than this guy. Yeah, okay, yeah. No, no.
yeah. But
That's
the
okay.
other thing is, notice that the guy in front, the taller guy, has the big hair,
Yeah,
whereas the guys at the back have just got their little hats with their ear
yeah,
flaps, whatever. So it makes me wonder whether he's some kind of prince or something,
yeah,
and maybe he's bigger because he's more important.
yeah.
But that's a wonderfully detailed sculpture. I mean, I'd love to know whether originally it was painted and they might have been wearing something like mail or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. These guys, you mean? Yeah. It was
Yeah.
completely makes sense. And this one is also very nice, right?
Oh yeah, this is one
Mm.
of the Roman emperors
Yeah.
being very nice because things didn't go well in battle.
Exactly.
But it's interesting when you look at see where the sword is when he's riding. I know we're not trying not to talk too much about swords, but there's a lot of kind of gestures and that are very familiar
Yeah.
from later history. In this case, I don't think anyone's wearing armor.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'm not so sure about the guy looking out the window at the back there on the right hand side. That may be just a cap, or it may be an armored helmet. It's
This
hard
guy?
to say. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you can see he's got like coils of hair coming down.
Yeah.
I
Here.
Unless if you got really close and it's actually little scales or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
One imagines when the King of Kings meets the Roman Emperor, they don't trust the Roman Emperor. So therefore, there would be bodyguards somewhere ready to jump out in case something went horribly wrong.
That's right. Okay, now
What?
we come here from
Yeah.
Hermitage Museum, St. Petersburg, Russia.
Mm,
Oh, look that one. Beautiful, isn't it?
it
This
is.
is
It
late
is.
Sasanian.
I personally,
Here.
I think it's Sogdian, and the reason
Sogdians. Yes.
it's Sogdian
Yes, yes.
is because the armor matches up with the Pianjakant wall paintings, and the archer is using a thumb draw. Because if you count his fingers from his little finger up, it's the thumb is on top and the index finger is over it. You notice, and this is the thing that we were talking about in the miniatures, the bowstring doesn't cover his face because the bowstring is just drawn in as a line, and
Here.
they're not worried about drawing it across his armor, but they are worried about drawing it across his face. And both faces are very, very nice. These have got the two strangest helmets I've ever seen. The wiggly lines around their throat and that are kind of shorthand for male, I'm sure. I think it was just easier to do. It's interesting that the arrowhead he's shooting isn't a pointy arrowhead. It's like a ball.
Yeah, yeah.
But this armor is really interesting because you see it
Look,
in the wall paintings. Oh, there's a lot of good things in this. The broken swords. I may be wrong, but I think there's two different. Oh no, sorry, I am wrong. One of the hilts looks something like a saber hilt. The upper one. One of the that one. The one on the other side looks. I don't know. So I'm trying to work out which parts are broken maces because there's three maces there that I can see. Two
yeah.
at the bottom and
This
one
one,
in those two at the bottom. And of course the shields and everything. But see, this is really weird because, and I say weird because there's a lot of interesting things. The armor is always referred to as lamellar, but something David Nickel published about some weird scales that he found in not that he found necessarily that he published from somewhere in Syria, I think, where they're rectangular scales with lots of holes on the sides so they can be tightly attached to each other, not like the kind of scales that modern reenactors use where they're not attached to each other, they're just attached to the backing. Now they say this is lamellar, but I don't think so. I think what we're looking at here is rows of scales that are made into bands and then sewn onto a backing at their top edge and then overlapped by the next one up. What I can't explain is why they're offset. On one half, the lines, which I assume is the binding on the bottom of the scales, but some people might think it's the binding on the top of the scales, whatever it is sometimes here and sometimes there on opposite sides of the body.
yeah, it is.
I don't know what that means. It's one of those things. Like the pickaxes down the bottom too are pretty nasty. See, this is the kind of weapon you use when you're fighting people in armor. It's got a spike that'll puncture, and it's got a short, strong axe blade that will split. It's not the kind of thing. It's not like a tabar that's carried in front of the Sultan or the Shah with a big blade.
Look at the shield. The shield has the same design as what we had in the Sasanian rock relief. You see that?
There's something about those shields that make me think that they've got a metal face on them made of segments like a Spangen helm. Doesn't it look like they're segments of metal with embossing on them?
Yeah, could be.
I'm not saying 100% or even 50%. I'm just.
And they look at this speed. They look like rivet hats.
Yeah. They're quite clearly very highly decorated.
Yeah.
I am not sure what that leg armor is supposed to be. I'm sure it's meant to be armor.
This type of mace hat, you can see it in Sasanian art, in others as well.
Yeah.
You see.
And these are heavy maces for doing impact damage.
And this one, I took also pictures of it, but unfortunately, I needed to have more detailed ones. Right.
Yeah, as before we did this, I mentioned I'd seen this.
Look at the helmet speed.
Yeah.
Look.
Do you know what it's a picture of? It's a biblical picture. It's the walls of Jericho where they're blowing the trumpets and the towers fall down. But all the people are Central Asian warriors. You notice they've got closed quivers. Their swords have the two-strap suspension, not the sword slide suspension. Look at the shapes of the bows that are being held.
Yeah.
look at the bow cases for bows without their strings on that
Mm,
are not everybody has them. He doesn't have a bow case.
mm.
Um, if you but this man at the top in the tower with his bow and holding two arrows, this is really detailed.
What pronounced feather plume? Look at this one.
Yeah, well, I think when an object, what, it's about that big, isn't it? Something like that. When an object is like that, you've got to bring these things out into the foreground to show people. I mean, they could have just etched them in, but this is much stronger and more
Yeah.
effective as a viewer, as a person looking at a piece of art. But even
Is this a man? Is this a man here?
he could be screaming.
Seems so.
Of course, look, there's little faces in little windows further up as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and notice that kind of zigzag pattern just
Mhm.
under the crenellations.
Yeah.
The Samanid, is it one of the Samanid tombs? The bricks are done like that, where they have bricks at different angles
Yeah.
to make a pattern because they didn't plaster the bricks. The bricks made a pattern from shadows as the sun moved across the sky. And that has that kind of look to it. The gate is rather nicely done. The
Looks.
crenellations are nice too, because that's the kind of
Yeah.
crenellations.
This one.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, they've got places that have crenellations like that. Have a look on the right-hand side where you've got the two people down the bottom.
Mhm.
One has a sword
Yeah.
and the other is holding a mace, which he's
Yeah.
leaning on his shoulder. He
You
wears
know,
a sword.
this guy
Sorry.
looks like go home. I don't want this place to be destroyed. Don't play here your war game. Go home.
Leave us alone.
He looks
The
like
other
that.
thing is the man with the mace, his horse
Yeah.
is armored.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, so it's a lot of detail. There's a thing here that you see in Tang Dynasty paintings because they had bow cases like that as well. Now, later bow cases and swords, the bow case is on top and the sword is underneath.
Yeah.
But when they had bow cases that you put the unstrung bow in,
Yeah.
it's always underneath the sword because it kind of sits down under your thigh out of the
Yeah.
way. I mean, of course, when you want to use your bow, you had to go somewhere where you could string it.
Yeah. So
But if you're going into battle with a mace, quite clearly you're going to be so close you're not going to be using your bow. This is so detailed. You can
really look. Oh, we saw that already.
yeah.
Okay, this is
It
another picture of that. I mean,
yeah,
I
it's a
have to be honest with you. I really love the whole plate, but my hero in this plate is this guy.
yeah.
I don't know why. I just like it, you know.
I like the horsemen because they're all doing different things. It's
Yeah,
I mean, there's
that's
a
right.
guy holding his shield up. There's people with their maces ready. There's somebody with a big flag. I mean,
Yeah,
it's full on. There's spears with tassels,
yeah.
every type of thing. And as we're pointing out, they're covered in armor.
Oh, now we come to lions, huh?
Oh yeah.
Lion hunt. Beautiful.
I mean,
Beautiful.
it's 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 such a classic thing the way they do this kind of stuff.
Look at the
Okay.
disc. Remember, we talked about this
Yep.
disc very often, also in
Yeah,
later periods. Yeah.
yeah. Though I think that disc is actually a jewel, not a piece of armor. Notice how perfectly they show him holding the bow and drawing.
Yeah.
I mean, his wrist is up. It's a high wrist position, if that's the way you call it. He we discussed this at the time we wrote the article. I think he's turning around and he's trapped his sword under his leg. Other people, I think Carve thought that he was facing backwards. He was riding backwards, which is a thing you can do. But why would his sword end up there? Whereas it would end up there if he's turned right around so that his knee is pointing back as well. when you don't have stirrups, you can do strange things. I'm not sure I'd be comfortable with that. Others, where they show the king shooting backwards, he's just twisted at the waist. It's not as extreme as this.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. Again, you see the two ribbons coming off the back of his crown.
Yeah.
Yeah. He looks like he's got a couple of pom-poms coming out the front. Yeah, when you're the king, do whatever you like. His horse's tail is tied into a little knot. This was used in Central Asia right up until, I don't know, it might still be being done in places like.
The king is so brave. I really love it. The lions are so brave. And the horse, let me get out of here, man. All these macho man, the lions, and let me just look at the face, poor guy. I wants to get out. It reminds me of the same face in miniatures horses had, right?
Yeah. But look at how his ears are turned back.
Yeah.
Concentrating on all the chaos that's happening behind him.
Yeah.
They really. Also, the sword scabbard's highly decorated too.
Yeah, absolutely, very beautiful.
But I think this is representing the king in his hunting clothes, which is just a mid thigh length shirt, baggy trousers.
Yeah,
I think in these cases he's just wearing shoes. I don't think he's wearing boots.
Now we go to Archäologisches Museum in Mainz, Germany. They have also, the ones we saw before were from Iranian sites, museum, the National Museum of Iran, Iran Bastan, and also St. Petersburg Hermitage. Now we go to Archäologisches Museum, where I visited in Germany. They have also very nice collection of Sasanian objects, not only arms and armor, but I'm only interested in arms and armor, so we are going to see.
So I won't say that I've got one of those buckles just over there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
One of the big bronze buckles.
I mean, because people ask me, why didn't you take pictures of the rest of Sasanian objects? Man, okay, next time I go there, we'll do that, promise. But for now, so look at the helmets they have. Beautiful, aren't they?
Yeah, and this classical pattern on the, well, you said that it's like a copper alloy covered with silver. That kind of fish scale pattern. Yeah. You see it on sword scabbards as well.
Yeah.
It obviously had some kind of meaning beyond just being decorative.
The feather, in Iranian scholars believe the feather, I mean, it's clear, it's not only, it was for Sasanians extremely important, also as Zoroastrians, they were really devout Zoroastrians. And then as a simorgh, because simorgh is in the Shahnameh, people know it has also in Zoroastrian religion plays a major role. So, and they were devout warriors believing in Zoroastrianism. We should not forget that. And this is very beautiful, very beautiful.
It's a great pattern. I mean,
the helmets they have, they're even more beautiful compared to Metropolitan Museum of Art or British Museum. They have, Archäologisches Museum, I think there's something about these helmets there. They're so beautiful. I mean, they're all beautiful, of course. They're really nice. I really love Sasanian helmets. Really beautiful.
Oh, yeah. They've got there's kind of what, you have the narrow ones that are.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Without seeing it in person, you've seen it, so you know. But some of them are fairly narrow.
Yes, they are.
And they basically look like a hat.
Yeah, they do.
Except they're made of iron and silver and all that kind of stuff.
And look at this, please. Look at this. These are for this avatar, the male armor. You see that? The holes.
I wonder if they're for directly connecting the aventail. Look how far apart they are. It's too far apart for male. But did they have those little, I think they're called vervels or something in French, little loops that come out, and you ran a leather strap through the top of the male, and it went through the loops around.
Yeah.
With me, obviously.
I had one of them when I was in Iran last time, like 2 months ago. So we're going to write an article with it with colleagues, and I had one of them actually excavated, one of these things, and also very beautiful. And I tell you one thing: once you have it in your hand, Bede, solid. The
Mm-hmm.
bronze layer, and then I never thought these were to be that solid. Unbelievably solid. What a solid helmet, really, really, really solid
Yeah.
helmets.
I mean, they've put a lot of they like raised rivets. I mean, like the Japanese actually.
Yeah, of course.
That was a thing that they found very
Yeah,
aesthetically pleasing. But I wonder with a sword, if you're striking down, did the sword edge catch in the rivets, and did it actually damage the sword? In which case, were people, well, we won't hit him on the top of the head. Let's go for somewhere else. I don't. I honestly don't know. I think uh, it could be purely decorative. We've got to put rivets in there to hold it all together. So why not make them a prominent part of the design?
yeah, yeah.
See, sometimes things don't have another purpose aside from their original purpose, holding it together, and the fact that you can make it look pretty.
Really
See this,
nice.
and you can see the sword scabbard next to it. You can see how similar the design is.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, but
Late
see that,
Sasanian, right? T
yeah.
shape.
Well, that is late Sasanian, but the helmet may not be, because I think
No, no,
this
no.
pattern.
I agree.
I
Agree.
could, look, I could be wrong. You need experts on metalwork to do that. But the thing that I notice is the ridge down the center of the main plate that goes from front to back.
Yeah. Look, this one.
Yeah, see how beautifully that's forged?
Yeah,
I mean, any armor. I mean, bear in mind how old it is.
yeah.
I mean, that could be anything from 14 to 1600 years old. And look at how beautiful that shape is.
Yeah, I mean, I had this discussion with one armorer, and then he goes like, "Well, I could do it much more exact." And say, "Yeah, of course, you designed it on your computer first." What kind of comparison is this? Honestly, right?
Yeah. Look, it's sometimes when I'm doing patterns on leather,
Yes.
I design them on a computer to get everything perfectly
Yeah.
symmetrical. So I draw them up, and then I take the drawing and use the computer's ability to make symmetrical objects to make it symmetrical. But when you actually carve it, it does shift a little bit.
Yes.
So I don't know whether it's worth all the effort of putting it on a computer. Because I've done it just with tracing paper and things. So.
Exactly. No, I mean, my point was, you guys design it on the computer, and then you forget once you want to really do it in real work. You know.
And I
You know?
mean, I'm just looking now. Now we're looking at this little rectangle on the front there
Yeah.
with its zigzags,
This one.
and yeah, and that could even, there's little plant motifs between the zigzags. That could be just a stylized mountain with pine trees on it or something like that. I mean, who knows? That's the good part. We can look at things and we really don't know. Do you notice
Beautiful.
that some of the rivets in that panel look like they're gilded too?
Yeah. Some
So
are. Yeah. Like this
yeah,
one. Look.
yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I wonder if they were all gilded once, and this was just,
Yeah,
so
could be. Yeah,
tiny.
of course.
But on the other hand,
Yeah.
I don't know. I find it hard to really work it out. Maybe the ones on that plaque were gilded so that they blended into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a beautifully executed helmet, and you've got this almost Spangenhelm type idea where you've got a piece that goes all the way across from ear to ear, and then another piece that goes over the top of that from front to back, and then you've got panels that are riveted in between the pieces, forming this really quite strong structure. And the fact that
You
they've
know,
decided
let me
what.
just say something here, because many of our colleagues don't do practice. I mean, archery or martial arts or cutting or fighting. But I sometimes people think, this is conceited to say that. But no, actually, guys, one of our colleagues, you are going to laugh about it. Obviously, no martial artist, no cutting test experience, nothing. Was telling me, well, Spangenhelm, as you can see, is weak. I said, yeah, why is it weak? listen. Because if you have made a one piece, then listen. This is much better because this one, Spangenhelm, yeah, can be cut by sword. Where, yeah, exactly. Where you have this. And I said, you know what? I said, what? You don't need to cut the Spangenhelm with a sword. Do me a favor. Get tatami omote hard grain, not that soft grain, hard grain. Try to go 1 inch into that. 1 inch if you're not an experienced swordsman. Then we will talk again. You know, what kind of imagination is that? And excuse me, and he published that. He published it, and I had to talk with him. And I said, no, it's possible. I said, okay, what are you talking about? Excuse me, Pete. I'm sorry. What should I say, right?
I mean, from the very rare cases of, I mean, we know in miniatures they show helmets being split down the center and that occasionally happened in real life. Because in the Baba Namar, his helmet is hit, and I don't know whether it was split in half, but the blade went through, and he had a padded silk cap underneath.
Yeah,
and the blade didn't cut through the silk cap, but the impact split his scalp open.
yes, it does. I agree.
And I mean, so I don't know. I think maybe his helmet strap broke. I can't remember. It's been 30 years since I read the Baba Nama, but I should read it again. I got a new translation a couple of years ago, but cutting through one of these would be impressive. It makes you think, why did they have those little axes with the points on the end on the silver plate if helmets were so easy to cut through with swords? Why were all the swords broken?
Exactly.
Because if you're going full on, I mean, the as good as Persian swords were, it's 5th, 6th century technology.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there's going to be slag inclusions. And, you may have a sword that never breaks, but you also may pick up another sword that just, from impact, snaps.
Yes. So this is another picture of that. Oh, now we go to this one. So there is a publication of that. Just let me just mention, go to the better one. Oh, excuse me, mix up. This one. Yeah. This one. So let me just go here in the back. So because there are some parts of it. And our colleagues who had them, because I haven't handled that or had it analyzed, but wrote about it. They say it is a fossilized hard leather. This part, right? So
that's
yeah. Just wanted to mention that one. Right? I didn't again take it with a pinch of salt. I didn't analyze this one.
And then covered with silver plate.
Yeah.
And that the silver plate part for there has fallen off. Because when you look at the pattern, it looks as though where that dark material is, it's got the same pattern as where the silver plate is.
It does.
So that's it. Your cursor's pointing to a rivet, and those little domes I thought were rivets, but they can't be, because why do you have 4 or 5 rivets?
Yeah.
See, one at there's 2 at the base, then 1 halfway up, then 1 on the way over the curve. That's very, very, very unusual, I think.
Yeah, because if you compare this one to the one which is real rivet, like this one, you see, this is real rivet, right? Rivet hats.
Yeah.
But this is right out. Yeah, this is something different. You see, look at this
dome, and you on silver you make that with a little dome punch and a dapping block, where you anneal the silver, and this little punch has like a little ball on the end, and you just go hit it, and it makes a dome on the other side of the metal. And this is what it looks like. But see, what are in the piece that doesn't have the metal covering it, what are the little domes there?
This one?
Well, yeah, the ones that, so where that dark material is, there's a double row of the little pretend rivets. Are they rivets? Because I can see holes in them.
Yeah, I don't know.
Are they embossed into the leather, and then the silver plates have been put on with the same embossing to I don't
Yeah,
know. I've never seen it. I mean, the helmet shape looks really nice.
very nice. It's a beautiful helmet.
Yeah. So, I
Very
mean,
nice.
but it's so hard to work out how this was put together.
Look at this. Okay, now we go to back to National Museum of Iran. Iran. This is a helmet which they found in a shipwreck close to Bandar Abbas. I mean, there is an islet, small island close to Bandar
Mhm.
Abbas. I forgot the name as usual. And this helmet, next to many other items, were found there. But then some local peoples found them and then they retrieved them. I mean,
Yeah.
governments, museums, anyhow.
Mhm.
And as you can see it here, this is the shape. I think our colleague, Dr. Nicole, David wrote an article on that, and he compared it to an excavated helmet from Central Asia, which had real documentation. And that one had not the same, but very similar, I mean, let's say at the rim
Yeah.
here of the helmet decoration, but no,
Mhm.
no silver stars, right?
Yeah.
And then that one on top of it had like a finial. And
Mhm.
then David, Dr. Nicole, came to this idea that this should be a hole here. He didn't handle it. He admits that in this article that he only based his article on observations of pictures. But when I was
Mm.
in Iran, I had this in my hand, so went through different parts. It is in a very bad corroded state.
Oh,
You need to be careful, as you can see it here. But our colleagues did an excellent job in National Museum. They have very good guys there
oh yeah.
who
I
are into
mean,
restorations. So they restored it, put it on a base to keep it intact. And then there was another thing which was corroded found next to it, or there were many materials. David concludes this is a finial, and on top, it goes on top of it. Some colleagues in Iran, I forgot the name, one of our colleagues there, or two or three, concluded and attributed to the Sasanian period because some Sasanian objects were also found. But other colleagues say that the base is genuine, but this silver cannot belong from to the same period. And the argumentation is, especially the silver stars, they say that they are look very intact, right? Compare,
oh yeah.
yeah. So this is a very controversial helmet. I just wanted to mention that.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. The shape is what you would expect from the 8th to 10th century or something like that. The decoration. I mean, I don't know. I would. I mean, we've got rope borders on that on the rim on either
Mm,
side.
mm,
We've then got kind of raised pyramid shapes making a pattern.
mm.
Um, and then we've got those very, very shiny rivets with ball tops.
Yeah,
Um, I'm I'm at a complete loss. The corrosion in the iron part of the helmet. If this has been underwater,
yeah.
yeah, that's not surprising. But you could get that much corrosion in 100 years. Um,
It
I've
takes
seen,
much more.
yeah. Um, I'll have to show a picture of a hammer I found a few months ago, and it was where the metal is separating into layers like that. And I mean that's real serious corrosion.
Yeah,
But I think the shape of the bowl of the helmet is really quite good.
yeah,
Um, yeah. See, the problem is when it's restored, it might be much easier to clean the silver, and
yeah.
that
You're right.
may,
That's another point. Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Dr. Akbarzadeh was telling me, oh, well, the silver is not corroded enough, but then again, it was restored. You're right. And silver, uh, yeah, yeah. You cannot compare it to iron or steel, right? As far as
Mm.
corrosion is concerned.
Yeah, it's a different type of corrosion. I'm looking at that rope border. That's remarkably intact. That's very fine diagonal lines to make it look like a piece of rope forming a border there.
Mm.
And and there's another border between the two rows of pyramids as well.
Yeah,
Very, very fine lines. You would imagine with corrosion you would lose those.
yeah.
So again, I'm not qualified to comment. I'm trying to work out, is there a separate rivet in the front of each of the stars,
Mm.
or
It-
or is or is just something soldered on the other side that's fitted through a hole in the helmet?
Look at the holes here at the base, on the base of the
Yeah.
helmet. You see that? Mhm. Yeah.
Well, where the silver what? Well, yeah, this is really interesting. I
Very
there
interesting.
seems to be more of the silver on the left-hand side, like there was traces of something coming down.
Mm. Yeah.
I mean, when we say left and right-hand side, it's very hard to tell which is the front and back of this.
Yeah, it's this one exactly. The rest, the rest of Sasanian helmets I handled in museum, also saw in Hermitage, or saw in also in Archaeologisches Museum in Mainz. You can tell where is front, where is not, and this one is really hard to say.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Because there are some helmets that have a row of
Yeah.
decoration that runs up the front like that with a band. And I mean, even going back to ancient Elamite times, I think there's a helmet that's got a group of gods on the front in silver gilt, and then a bronze helmet bowl. I'll have to look at one of my books on Elam to
Yeah.
find out if that's, have I remembered
Now
it correct.
we go back to Archaeologisches Museum in Mainz, or Archaeology Museum in Mainz, and there they have a Sasanian gauntlet. I really love this one. I
It's really
really love it.
amazing.
Amazing,
Yeah,
amazing.
it's the way it's set up. It gives you complete coverage of the hand because they're
Yeah.
basically strips that have been embossed to look like scales. Um,
And this one's for the, let's say, like a, can I say bazoo band? You know what I mean? But like a
yeah.
leather
Well, if
cover.
you're wearing gauntlets, you're almost certainly going to be having a bazooban.
Yeah.
But because if your hand is protected and you don't have a bazooban, they just cut your wrist.
What's
Uh,
the purpose? Yeah.
yeah, and the thing is, what's the material? Is it bronze or is it iron?
To be honest with you, because I haven't handled that, I
Oh,
just
right.
took pictures. I don't know.
Yeah. Because it's interesting. I mean, the hole in the base of the thumb,
Yeah.
um, that looks old, but it's fairly sharply defined. You can see,
Let me get
like,
a bit of picture. Look at this.
yeah,
Here we can see a tri-dimensional feeling
yeah,
to it, right?
yeah. You can see the metalsmith that made this made each of those rows, and then he hammered out ridges in them, and he cut little nicks into them, and then he did the edges of them. Uh, I if I were to say, what is he trying to emulate here? I think he's made a metal version of a leather glove.
Yeah.
I think the ribs along the edges of what appears to be a strap that goes across there are imitations of stitching, not to pretend it's stitched, but to, this is the way things look. This is the way we want it to look. Here we go. Um, the rivets are those big solid rivets you see on the helmets. The helmets we're totally sure of. The way it's made, those ribs would make it stronger for the same weight. The strap that goes around from the base of the hand, that goes from around the thumb, it's obviously missing a bit there.
Mm.
Um, that's probably, you've got an articulation up, you've got the strap, and then an articulation down, then another articulation, then another articulation. Be very interesting to see a modern armorer make a pair of gauntlets like this to find out how comfortable they are to wear. I
We
think
are
they'd
going
be
to
okay.
replicate it.
Oh,
We are going
good.
to, yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, see,
I
this is the
really
thing.
love this one, Pete.
Oh,
I
yeah,
really love it.
it's really interesting. They've just dug up a 1400s gauntlet somewhere in Europe recently in the last few months. And the only difference is the articulation of the fingers. This is our full protection type gauntlet. whereas the ones with articulated fingers are a little show-offy, I think. If I was fighting, I would like my hand completely protected like that one,
Absolutely.
rather
Absolutely.
than having beautiful fingers that are all
Absolutely.
until someone hits you and they all, get
Absolutely. This offers a better protection in contrast to what people say. So, oh, this is better to have that. No, I mean, I absolutely agree. This gives you a better protection. No
oh yeah.
doubt about that.
And
No doubt.
but it still gives you that complete flexibility in the
Yeah,
fist,
it does.
uh, which I think is important.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure. Maybe the rivets on the finger plates are decorative. Because
Yeah.
remember, it's one piece of material. Those rivets can't go anywhere
No.
unless they're loose rivets into the next plate
Yeah.
that allow the plate to flex. Like the rivet isn't hammered down tight, so like when you're joining the parts of a helmet
Yeah.
together.
But imagine you have that helmet with rivet hats. Now you have here rivet hats. It looks good, right? Everything looks good, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. This is, and the metal does have the kind of color close to what the iron part of the helmet had.
Yeah.
I look, I don't know. It's so hard to say.
Yes,
Maybe those rivets are to hold lining. That they're
oh, it
well,
could
the
be.
one of them looks like definitely like a real rivet. So maybe they're all real rivets.
Okay,
But
B. Let me just go ahead, please. Yes.
that was
Uh,
very.
Stop the sharing this. This was a beautiful thing. Thank you very much for being here today with
It was
me.
a pleasure to look at that. It was really nice stuff.
Thank you very much, Bede, and I wish you then a nice day. Thank you, Bede.
Thank you very much.
Bye
Same to
bye.
you.